Have you ever wondered how the United States became the most powerful nation in history? Surprisingly, its rise was anything but inevitable. For more than a century after the discovery of the Americas, most of North America was largely ignored because explorers were searching for something far more valuable: gold, silver, spices, and thriving civilizations. Christopher Columbus believed he had found a new route to Asia by sailing west, but instead he reached islands in the Caribbean. Mistakenly thinking he was near India, he called the native people Indians and returned to Spain with stories of wealth and opportunity. Excited by the promise of riches, the Spanish crown launched more expeditions, while Portugal focused on building a profitable trade empire by sailing around Africa. Soon, Spain and Portugal divided the unexplored world between themselves, with Spain conquering much of Central and South America, where immense treasures were found. North America, however, seemed far less valuable, so it remained mostly untouched. Although Spanish explorers briefly searched the region, they found no massive gold or silver deposits and lost interest. The English also explored the continent early on, but political conflicts delayed permanent settlements for decades. Eventually, colonies such as Jamestown and Plymouth were established, and thousands of settlers crossed the Atlantic, transforming the eastern coastline into a chain of growing British colonies. At the same time, France expanded deep into the interior of North America, setting the stage for an inevitable struggle over the continent. By the mid-18th century, Britain and France were locked in a fierce battle for control of North America in what became known as the French and Indian War. Despite France forming alliances with several Native American tribes, Britain's much larger colonial population and military strength ultimately secured victory. The war dramatically reshaped the map, with Britain gaining Canada and vast territories, while France surrendered most of its North American possessions. However, victory came at a heavy financial cost. Burdened with enormous debt, Britain imposed new taxes on its American colonies, expecting them to help pay for the war. The colonists fiercely rejected these taxes, arguing that they had no representation in the British government. Growing frustration soon turned into open rebellion, and on July 4, 1776, the colonies declared their independence. Yet the declaration itself did not create a new nation overnight. After years of brutal fighting, the Americans finally secured victory, only to discover that freedom brought new challenges. The 13 former colonies operated almost like separate countries, and the weak government struggled to hold them together. The young nation stood on the edge of collapse, facing a defining moment that would determine whether the United States would survive or disappear before it had truly begun. After gaining independence, the newly formed United States faced a serious challenge. The original government was weak and ineffective, so the Founding Fathers drafted a new constitution that created a stronger federal system capable of uniting the nation. Once 9 states approved it, the Constitution officially came into effect, and in 1789 George Washington became the first president of the United States. Even then, however, the country occupied only a small portion of North America, while Spain controlled vast territories to the west. At the same time, Napoleon Bonaparte had risen to power in France with ambitious plans to build a French empire in North America. Concerned that French control of the Mississippi River could threaten American trade, the United States entered negotiations with France. In one of history's most remarkable land deals, Napoleon unexpectedly agreed to sell not just New Orleans, but the entire Louisiana Territory for just $15 million. This historic purchase instantly doubled the size of the United States and opened millions of acres of land for westward expansion. As the American population grew rapidly, thousands of families moved west in search of farmland and new opportunities, bringing them into increasing conflict with Native American tribes whose ancestral lands were gradually taken over. In 1819, the United States also purchased Florida from Spain, further strengthening its position on the continent. The expansion continued as Mexico gained independence from Spain and inherited the vast northern territories, including Texas. Hoping to develop the region, Mexico encouraged American settlers to move there, but before long those settlers outnumbered the local population and declared Texas an independent republic. In 1845, Texas officially joined the United States, triggering border disputes that eventually led to the Mexican-American War. Following the conflict, the United States acquired enormous territories stretching across the Southwest in exchange for $15 million, and a few years later purchased even more land through another agreement with Mexico. At the same time, Britain and the United States peacefully divided the Oregon Territory, giving America control of the land south of the 49th parallel. Within just a few decades, the nation had expanded from the Atlantic Ocean all the way to the Pacific, transforming itself into a vast continental power. What had once been a small collection of colonies was now becoming one of the fastest-growing nations on Earth, setting the stage for an even greater rise in the years to come. Following the Louisiana Purchase, the United States continued expanding at an extraordinary pace. The discovery of gold in California sparked one of the greatest migration waves in American history, while fertile farmland in the Oregon Territory attracted thousands of new settlers looking for opportunity. As the nation grew larger and wealthier, its greatest challenge came not from foreign enemies, but from within. The issue of slavery had divided the country for decades. Northern states had largely abolished slavery, viewing it as morally wrong, while the Southern economy depended heavily on enslaved labor. Tensions reached their breaking point after Abraham Lincoln was elected president in 1860. Fearing the end of slavery, several Southern states left the Union and formed their own government, triggering the American Civil War. After years of devastating conflict and enormous loss of life, the Union emerged victorious, slavery was abolished, and the United States was reunited.
As the 20th century approached, the United States was transforming from a rapidly growing nation into an emerging global power. Political unrest in Cuba and the decline of the Spanish Empire drew America into the Spanish-American War. Within a short time, the United States defeated Spain and gained control of territories including Puerto Rico and the Philippines, while also securing Hawaii as a vital naval base. Soon afterward, President Theodore Roosevelt accelerated America's rise by dramatically strengthening the U.S. Navy and supporting the construction of the Panama Canal, one of the greatest engineering achievements of its era. Completed in 1914, the canal connected the Atlantic and Pacific Oceans, allowing American naval and commercial ships to move quickly between the two coasts and greatly increasing the nation's global influence. By the time the First World War began, the United States had evolved from a small group of colonies into one of the world's most powerful and strategically important nations, setting the stage for its emergence as a true global superpower.